Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, joined by attorney Rachel Alters, and we're going to talk about a Prudential long-term disability claim that Rachel recently won on behalf of one of her clients. And Rachel, we want you to tell us about the history of the claim, what you were able to do for the client, why Prudential wrongfully denied the claim, and then we'll provide some tips for people to take away that would help them with their Prudential long-term disability claim. So tell us about the background of this claim.
My client was a research epidemiologist for a medical institute, and she worked there for over 20 years. And the last couple years of her position, she felt really sick and fatigued, and she couldn't focus on her job, and just wasn't like her. She was having so many medical issues, and she went and ended up getting diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. Prudential did pay her. They paid her for 24 months. They approved her claim. However, they focused solely on a mental nervous claim, and they claimed that her issues were due solely to depression and anxiety, and they completely ignored the chronic fatigue diagnosis because, according to the policy, they'd only have to pay her 24 months for the depression, anxiety claim. So they paid her 24 months. She called me right when they cut her off, and she's like, this is not even my diagnosis. I don't have depression. I've not even been diagnosed with this. Why are they doing this? Why are they ignoring my claim for chronic fatigue? I explained to her what they were doing and why, and I said, we need to fight this, and we did. We filed an appeal, and we worked closely in conjunction with her doctors and got the appeal reversed, and now she's back on claim.
Okay, so explain what a mental nervous limitation is in a policy, because that's what you just touched upon.
Yeah, so most group policies that are governed by ERISA have a mental nervous limitation in them. And what they say is if you suffer from, now some of them say if your disability is caused or contributed to by a mental nervous condition, or if it's solely due to a mental nervous condition, each policy language is different. The policy will only pay you for 24 months total. So you can't get it. So if you're disabled due to a mental nervous condition for the next 20 years, your policy will only pay you for 24 months, which sounds unfair, and most of my clients are very unhappy about that. But unfortunately, unless you also have a physical condition that's disabling, you're not going to get paid over that 24-month period. So it happened to be that my client did have a physical condition, and she has chronic fatigue syndrome, which is not a mental nervous claim. It's not a mental nervous condition at all. However, it's very hard to prove that you have this condition. It's not something that you could take a blood test and show. So we had to work in conjunction with her treating doctors to prove that this condition was not a depression, anxiety condition, that this was far more severe and not even more serious, but just more that it fell outside of a mental nervous claim.
Was your client even receiving any psychiatric care?
No, she was not. She wasn't even depressed.
So it sounds almost fraudulent for Prudential to come out and say, how did they reach the conclusion to come out and say, well, we think you have a mental nervous condition such as depression?
Right. Well, most people who have a condition, whether it's chronic fatigue syndrome or a back condition or any kind of condition that's disabling that takes them out of their everyday normal routine, they're not able to work, they're not able to do the things they love, they become depressed. So everybody's going to have depressive symptoms because, obviously they're being forced to do something they can't do, and they wish they were able to have their old life back. So she probably had some, notes in her medical records that said that she was feeling depressed. But that's different than having severe major depression and anxiety where you need treatment for that condition. She didn't. She had chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, what the doctor said was she initially diagnosed her with depression in the beginning, years ago. But then once they realized it was chronic fatigue syndrome, they weren't treating her for depression at all over the last several years. It was treating her solely for the chronic fatigue. So the doctor was very adamant with the insurance carrier and said, I don't know what you're talking about. You're criticizing my diagnosis and my treatment of my patient, and basically saying what I am doing for my patient is completely invalid and that my medical diagnosis is incorrect. So she wrote a scathing letter to Prudential. It was probably 3 or 4 pages long, pointing out why Prudential's peer review doctors who claimed that this was solely a mental nervous conditions were completely wrong, and how her condition was not depression and anxiety, how it completely was something else. And she, cited to medical literature and articles and all this testing that she did on my client. And I believe that working with her doctor and her doctor being so passionate about her patient really helped overturn this case.
What type of physician was the main treating doctor for your client?
She actually was a psychologist. She wasn't a medical doctor. She had a PhD, but she specialized in treating chronic fatigue patients. So this was something that she'd done a lot of research on. Most of her, patients were patients who have chronic fatigue syndrome, which is now also called ME.
So that was probably one of the red flags that threw up for Prudential to say you have a mental nervous condition because you're treating with a psychologist, because you've handled hundreds of chronic fatigue ME cases. How often is it that the main doctor is a psychologist versus an MD, a medical doctor, an internist?
Right. I mean, it's difficult. A lot of times my clients are treating with MDs, but a lot of MDs, whether they're the primary care doctors, they don't really know what to do with a client or a patient who has chronic fatigue syndrome. There's not much treatment for this type of an illness. So a lot of times they are sent to specialists who can have PhDs. They don't necessarily have to be medical doctors. Now, I think that Prudential and other insurance carriers frown upon patients treating outside of the MD community, and when they are treating with people who are therapists or psychiatrists or psychologists, they do tend to say, okay, well then this must be a mental nervous condition. But this doctor did specialize in chronic fatigue. She's very well known, so it wasn't like they could say she didn't know what she was talking about or know that she was qualified to treat chronic fatigue syndrome.
Right, because the issue with someone with chronic fatigue is there's a pain component to it, there's cognitive difficulties, and an internist isn't really going to treat you for that to help you get better, whereas you can go to a psychologist and get therapies and exercises and learn to deal with to manage your symptoms so that you can have a quality of life, not necessarily get back to work, but having a quality of life and functioning normal and being able to go to dinner and do groceries and participate in activities with your kids and family and even vacations is different than committing to an employer 40 hours a week. So I think it's a manipulative, the norm for what we see from Prudential to say, well, you had a psychologist, it must have been depression, even though there's never any codes there. And then also, Rachel, how does Prudential never even examine this claimant, never speak to the treating doctor, never speak to her, and on something that is as subjective as a chronic fatigue, make the diagnosis and say, nope, based upon what we see in the medical records, we say you're depressed.
Right. Well, it's, unfortunately they get away with it. So, they do what they can get away with. So if they had to do a medical exam on every claimant that came through their offices, they would be spending thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's much more economical for Prudential to just hire a doctor to read some records and go, I disagree, because of course they're going to disagree because Prudential's paying them to disagree. So they're completely biased. And when you get to the court systems, unfortunately, in these group policies that are governed by ERISA, the judges allow this type of denial of benefits based on peer review, review of records only. The judges don't require that a patient or a claimant is evaluated and examined in person. So these insurance companies get away with it, unfortunately.
So it's allowed, but it's the bare minimum.
Right.
It's not the right way to do it. It doesn't mean a court's going to find that it's reasonable. The good news for claimants out there, and the reason that we've been able to have so much success for claimants, is that the insurance companies are in the numbers game. It's like the old Pintos they used to talk about where the engines were going to explode. They knew the engines were going to blow up when the cars got hit, but they figured it's cheaper to just deal with the few that are going to have a problem than to fix the problem.
Right.
And the disability insurance companies say, you know what, we know we're not doing the best job, but we'll get away with denying so many claims that most people will just go away, that it's cheaper to just keep doing what we're doing rather than to try to do it the right way because it's going to cost us more money.
Sure.
And that's what happens in these claims, and that's when it's important to have a good lawyer and a strong treating doctor to get involved and put together a very strong appeal, number one, so that you have the best chance to get your benefits approved. And even if you don't win the appeal, which there's not a guarantee you're going to win the appeal, although you did here and you do often win your appeals, that then you go to a judge who's going to look at it, and you have to be able to make the argument to say that their position is just not reasonable, Judge. It's clear that our client's disabled, and the manner in which they evaluated the claim's unreasonable, and you should reverse this denial.
Right.
So you have to not only think about winning the appeal, which is the number one goal, but also getting so much evidence in there that when the judge gets it, the judge looks at it and goes, it's just not reasonable, Prudential. I'm reversing the claim.
Right.
So
that's our hope.
if you have a Prudential short or long-term disability claim, feel free to reach out to Rachel, myself, any of our lawyers. We'll immediately provide you with a free initial phone consultation. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you, and we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.